actually was in the boat when we ran out of gas that time. It was a long time ago, but he remembered where it was. The last thing I can do for my father is to kind of just talk about him a little bit. It's like Frankie said, he did live his life. He cared about people to the point that really you couldn't say anything much bad about him. He was larger than life. It was not, growing up I never thought that. I thought everybody had a dad like that, but how was I wrong? He grew up in the Depression, and the Depression, you know, everybody was quite poor. They lived in poverty. So when he came out of that, he always felt like he was living like a king. Wherever he was, it was like, this is extravagant. He loved simple things. He was a minimalist. He would make something more than buy it. He was very content. You know, Philippians says, in Philippians 4, it says, not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. He was very content. Before I say a few words about him, I'm going to read a quote, and it came to my mind because it sort of has to do with how he looked and thought about life. It has to do with interruptions of life, and that's actually what life is. Most of us get frustrated with interruptions. This is a C.S. Lewis quote. It's a little maybe hard to think about with me just reading it, but try to listen. The great thing, if one can, is to stop regarding all unpleasant things as interruptions of one's own or real life. The truth is, of course, that whatever one calls the interruptions are precisely one's real life, the life God is sending one day by day. My dad had a lot of life interruptions, but it was what God was sending him each day, and he lived into it. Three things I'll say about him, and one thing, he was frugal but extravagant. He was a very adventurous person, just things like Frankie was talking about. He loved those adventures, and he loved people intensely. When I say he's frugal but extravagant, I mean he would be like, he could get by on just about nothing and be happy. He always drank water at the restaurants. He would not buy Starbucks coffee, but if you wanted one, he'd be glad to get it for you. Wouldn't think about it. He'd be happy to enjoy you enjoying it. He paid for a lot of our mission trips we went on, thousands and thousands of dollars. Extravagant. But he was, at the same time, frugal. Like I say, he was adventurous. He liked adventure. Little small adventures like Frankie's talking about, and bigger ones too. But he was tied down because my brother was a person with Down syndrome, and kind of tied him down a lot, so his adventures couldn't be very far along usually. And that's what life is. It's an adventure. I think Helen Keller said life is an adventure or it's nothing at all. Well, his life was something because he loved adventure. But I want you to kind of think a little bit like my dad thought. Like this idea of adventure, and this is a quote from G.K. Chesterton I've always liked. It says, an adventure is only an inconvenience rightly considered. An inconvenience is only an adventure wrongly considered. So really an adventure usually is an inconvenience to start off with. And very few things were what my dad would be considered inconveniences. He took them as an adventure. There are different types of adventures too. Some adventures are fun and some are not so fun. He loved to go on the Appalachian Trail with us. He would take us, he would be the paddy wagon, and he would take me and Dory and Evan, and we would go, and he'd leave us off at one place, and then later the next day or two pick us up down the road. He couldn't really go on that adventure, but he could live it through us vicariously. He loved doing things like that. I remember when we were young, he took me and the kids out, not our kids, but like I was probably 7 or 8, he would just take us down Hunger and Hardship at night, and we would take kerosene lanterns and trot line fish and pull out fish and eels, and it was pretty impressive to young boys. And none of the other fathers in the neighborhood were fooling with us. They were watching TV or something like that. But that would have been my dad's pleasure. He enjoyed it more than we did. But he loved adventure. But some adventures aren't good. Many years ago, he was diagnosed to have colon cancer. Billy Moses said, "Mr. Garner, you got colon cancer, you're going to need surgery, maybe chemotherapy." And my dad, he didn't nut up about it. He wasn't happy about it, but that was one of these inconveniences. And I said, "Dad, I'm sorry you got colon cancer. That's kind of bad." He said, "It'll be an adventure." Who thinks like that? That's unbelievable. I think I need to think more like that. The final thing, love. He did love people. Y'all know it. Anybody that's even come in contact with him, he really cared about people. Before I talk about that, we had some caretakers that really cared about him. Thank y'all so much. You know, Carolyn came on about a little over a year ago, and when my dad got sick about last year, we started having sitters. Sarah, Geraldine, Liz, and Essie, and we just had so many people that were good to us. The day before he died, I think Geraldine took him out in a wheelchair. And why did she do that? She loved him. She loved him. She was thinking, like, what would I like to do? And she got her enjoyment through letting him ride in the wheelchair outside. Sarah fed him breakfast that morning in bed, and he kind of just started kind of not doing right, maybe breathing, maybe gagging or whatever. And she called Carolyn in, and fortunately we had 3 sitters in there at the time because it was a change of shift. And they called Lee, and she's my main caretaker, but she got called all the time, and she took it as an honor. But anyway, Lee got there shortly before he passed and was able to hug him and let him know we loved him. And by the time I got there, it was 5 minutes later, 4 women were just bawling. It was like I didn't have to tell me he passed, but wouldn't that be nice to be able to know that many people care about you at the time you pass? That's pretty neat. I really think about y'all. Thank y'all for all you did.